the 1-800 number is confidentiality. It saves everyone, the victim, the abuser, and the child as well. So with that being said, I'm going to start talking about my very first peer-reviewed journal article. It was, it's out of, let's see, sorry, I have my papers everywhere, and so I might be a little bit unorganized. It's based out of Dublin. It's the impact of exposure to domestic violence on children and young people. So this study pretty much, it was over an 11-year span. It talked about how it did go low-income families, middle-class families, and high-class families. So this is the University of Dublin. And it pretty much, the results of the study was that there was an increase, when people are exposed to domestic violence within their household, that there's an increased risk of experiencing emotional, physical, behavioral, and social things that impact their future and the way that people treat other people. When someone doesn't grow up in a household that is loving and nurturing all the time, you aren't taught on how to treat other people. So that is a very, very, very big effect that children who are exposed to this have. So with that being said, I'm going to tell you from the article, it did list several things, which some of these I didn't know, and some of these I actually experienced on a personal level, which is kind of crazy to me. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the emotional, and this is all from the article. The emotional, they have shame, they have guilt, they have abandonment problems. They grieve for family and personal losses a lot more than other people do. They have a lot of self-blame, like, why is this happening to me? Why my parents are fighting because of me. Especially, it's really hard for a child if the parents are fighting about like what school they're going to go to and who's going to pay for what. Obviously, if it has to do with them, they are going to feel like it's their problem, when children need to realize that it's not their problem. This is something between the parents. Usually some people might like conflict, so they might thrive off of it no matter what it is. It could be something as simple as what they're going to eat for dinner. I mean, everyone's had that argument before. And then they have, like I said, fear of abandonment, especially if the mom or dad leaves for an extended period of time and then they come back, like out of nowhere. It's like, why did they leave me? When are they going to come back? Why don't they love me? So, and then I do know in the article it did talk about that boys who experience this domestic abuse, that they're higher risk for, anger problems and things like that, whereas girls and females, they have a higher risk of like depression and like feeling like, man, get me out of this situation. I don't even want to, they just try to stay out of everything. And then some kids are also embarrassed. They don't want people to know that their parents act that way, or, anything like that. So then the next one that was talked about in the article was behavioral issues. That's obviously, domestic violence is mostly a behavior. So they would have trouble with lying. They'll be aggressive. Like I said, the males have higher tendency to be aggressive. And then they'll act out of control because that's what they've seen their whole life. So they might think that that's normal, or something like that. So one end of the spectrum with aggressive, it could turn you to be passive. If all there's fighting around, you don't have say in anything, you feel like, man, I need to get out of this situation, and you're just really passive. And then also refusing to go to school. Lying is what I also talked about. They'll have rigid defenses. They'll have excessive attention seeking. I did this whenever I was in elementary school. I would act out over anything. If the teacher was like, hey, turn your book to page 67, I would just be like, no, just to cause a scene because I wanted attention, because that is not something that I got at home. And a personal account here would be, I did anything and everything to get suspended, because guess what? I thrived on getting attention from my parents, whether it was good or bad. That drive home from them picking me up because I got suspended from school, it felt like home to me. Yes, they were yelling at me. Yes, they were not very happy with me, but guess what? I got to be with them and they were paying attention to me. That's correct. But, I mean, kids do act like that. So, also, this goes into me as a future educator. I need to be aware that kids are acting out, not because they're necessarily a bad child, but that they maybe don't get attention. And the only way they do get attention at home is by acting out. So with the out of control behavior, and then they also will have crazy mood swings, and then manipulation will definitely be involved in this, and a dependency. They will become dependent on someone, whether it be, you know, their parents or, you know, just that teacher at school. That's something that's very, very serious. So along with that, they'll also probably have social problems as well. I don't know if problems is the right word to say, but they'll have trust. There might be bullying involved, and then poor anger management will be there too. I know me as a person who grew up in a domestic violence household, I have really bad trust issues. It's hard to have amazing trust when your life is so out of control. It's so inconsistent. You know, like your parents say one thing, but then something happens and something